Small whispers began, as they usually do. An eyebrow raised here, a knowing gaze there. This is how the whispers came to be. No matter how deeply it is buried beneath layers of deception and well-designed lies, the truth finds ways of showing itself. This is true regardless of how closely it is concealed. At first, you could choose to disregard them, brushing them off as envy or being confused by the situation. It is possible that you even managed to convince yourself that they were nothing more than the mutterings of individuals who are incapable of comprehending the nuances of the situation. The truth, on the other hand, is patient. It waits in the shadows, bringing power to itself. When everything else fades away, it continues to exist. And now, what started out as murmurs has spilled into the open, leaving them running for shelter as their carefully created veneer melts away. Every nook and cranny of their lives has been flooded with the brutal clarity of the truth, which has sprung onto the scene like a dam cracking open. Each and every lie that they told, each and every half-truth that they murmured, and each and every premeditated deception that they used to construct their house of cards has been brought to light by the intense scrutiny of the public. The structure of their lies, which was once so astounding in its level of sophistication, is now revealed to be fragile and devoid of any potential for sustainability. Watch as the shame that they are experiencing causes their faces to burn. The confidence that was once smoldering has been replaced with a tightness of the jaw. A bent stance of defense has now replaced the commanding presence that was previously present. As a natural response, former allies withdraw from the situation, therefore separating themselves from the radioactive fallout. These are not straightforward white lies or benign misdirection. Rather, they are planned and calculated deceptions that are aimed to mislead, control, and maintain power at any cost. They are now confronted with a reckoning that is not only public but also painful because they have nowhere to escape, and their credibility is in shambles. Their desperate attempts to explain away the unexplained simply serve to dig the whole thing deeper. Each new excuse contradicts the previous one, and each justification rings hollow when compared to the substantial weight of facts. Something that started out as humiliation eventually evolves into something much more devastating: the total and full ruin of social relationships. There comes a time when one gets to the point where they have no choice but to confront judgment, when all avenues of escape are blocked off and the only road forward is ahead toward accountability. Every single justification has been exhausted, every single alibi has been disproven, and every single deflection has been acknowledged for what it was meant to be: a distraction. They are currently standing on the brink of that cliff, compelled to walk the plank that they have constructed for themselves. The repercussions of their deeds weigh heavily on each step that they take forward. The water below is murky and deep, full with the reckoning that they have evaded for such a long time, for so many years. The implications of their decisions cannot be undone. There is no last-minute reprieve, and there is no deus ex machina that can reverse the ramifications of their choices. The masks that they wore with such ease have already fallen off, exposing faces that have become distorted as a result of the stress of maintaining falsehoods. Their carefully manufactured personalities have crumbled under the weight of the pressure they have had to endure. All that is left is the unfiltered reality of who they really are and what they have done without any embellishments. They have been stripped of their facade, and now they stand exposed, not just to other people, but also to themselves alone. The waves of shame that wash over them cause their cheeks to turn red, which in turn affects their speech and causes them to change their posture. Regret is a shadow that trails closely behind, and it does not dissipate no matter how quickly they run or how deftly they move. It dawns on them with a crushing weight that everything, reputation, trust, influence, connections, and everything else they valued, is flowing through their fingers like sand, and once it is released, it is difficult to hold. There is a symbol for this moment that may be found in the ancient wisdom traditions. It is the figure of the idiot who is revealed, an individual who is not only mistaken, but foolish in the most profound sense. The individual who felt that their intelligence could outwit the truth itself. The individual who believed that the principles of consequence would in some way not apply to them. And the individual who mistakenly believed that temporary success would result in permanent immunity. The idiot is shown to be the empty vessel that they have always been, rather than the wise figure that they have feigned to be on many occasions. As you watch the collapse develop in real time, you will see public comments being botched and retracted, explanations that contradict previous declarations, evidence appearing that cannot be explained away, and followers departing ship one by one because they do not want to get caught in the undertow of embarrassment. There is no room for negotiation or compromise in the social rejection. Within a startlingly short amount of time, the adulation that was once shown has morphed into contempt. Their fall is not only a personal one, rather, it has a ripple effect that extends beyond themselves, impacting everyone who put their faith in their words, everyone who defended them against early critics, and everyone who built their lives and decisions on the foundation of their lies, which turned out to be quicksand. Because of the structural collapse, many people will be stuck in the ruins and will be compelled to reevaluate all that they have previously believed to be true. On the other hand, justice can be found in this humiliation in public, and the restoration of equilibrium can be found in this circumstance. The things that were taken from them, trust, reputation, opportunities, and peace of mind, have finally been regained and given back to the people who were entitled to them. The scales, which had been skewed so severely in their favor for such a long time, are now swinging violently in the opposite direction, maybe compensating for years of imbalance with the intensity of the correction that they are currently suffering. What they inflicted on other people without feeling any guilt is now the bitter taste of their own medicine, the potion that brings equilibrium back to a world that they tipped in their favor for a much longer period of time than they thought they should have. When they find themselves imprisoned in hallways that they have designed for themselves, there is a sense of cosmic poetry in the way that they negotiate the maze of repercussions that they have made for other people. You, on the other hand, who remained steadfast in your truth, even as the storms of their falsehood raged around you. You who kept your integrity even when it would have been easier to surrender. You who were labeled as unstable, unreasonable, or vengeful for merely stating what you knew to be true. Your emancipation is symbolized by this moment, which is like a cup that suddenly fills up with clean, fresh water after a period of dryness. An overwhelming sense of liberation pours over you, ushering you into a fresh start. The constraints that had previously held you back, such as uncertainty, fear, and the influence of others, dissipate, and you find yourself free for the first time in what seems like an eternity. You should now be able to feel the energy that was before constrained flowing freely through every part of your existence. The tightness that was in your chest begins to relax. The tension that was in your shoulders begins to release, and the weight that was pressing down on you begins to lift. The fog that had been obscuring your eyesight has been lifted, and you are now able to see a landscape of opportunities that had been concealed from view for an excessive amount of time. It was not walls of stone or bars of steel that held you captive. Rather, it was fear that held you captive. Fear of not being believed when you spoke the truth to power. Fear of standing alone against a tide of public opinion, and dread of their power and influence being turned against you in reprisal were the fears that held you captive. It was natural to be afraid of them, since they possessed resources, connections, and credibility that appeared to be unassailable. On the other hand, that prison was always a fiction, with its foundations constructed on the thin layer of lies. Now, as truth expresses itself with inexorable power, those prison walls disintegrate, showing that they were nothing more than projections all along. While you are experiencing this moment of vindication, take a look around you and observe that you are not standing alone. The feeling of solitude that you had in the past was only a momentary state. It was another illusion that has vanished in the light of the reality. When the truth is revealed in all of its obvious clarity, some of your supporters have been with you from the beginning, remaining silent but unwavering in their support of you. They have believed in you even when there was a lack of evidence and a great deal of doubt. Other people are fresh to your corner, and they are drawn to the light of your vindication like moths to a flame. They recognize courage when they see it presented in such a clear and straightforward manner. You are surrounded by divine energies. It appears as though the cosmos itself is conspiring in your favor, bringing you allies who possess the strength and wisdom you require at this moment. There is a discernible impact, regardless of whether one refers to it as synchronicity, supernatural intervention, or simply the natural alignment of truth seekers. You are encircled by a constellation of support that creates a protective circle around the truth that you have recently reclaimed. Leaders and protectors come into your life at the precise moment when you require them. These are people of conviction and authority who see in you a kindred spirit, someone who places a higher priority on truth than convenience and integrity than advancement. Not only do they provide emotional support, but they also provide tangible aid, resources, connections, and platforms from which your voice can reach people who are in need of hearing its message. Immediately following the war comes the triumph, which is a victory parade that celebrates not only the defeat of lying, but also the restoration of truth to its due place at the center of discourse. This is your moment of acknowledgement, when what you have persevered through is acknowledged, and when we honor what you have maintained during this ordeal. The fight that appeared to have no end in sight is finally revealing its purpose, which has brought you to this moment of complete vindication. This victory should not be celebrated with arrogance, but rather with the calm satisfaction of someone who has been proven right after having to endure doubt, scorn, and derision at the hands of others. Feel free to experience the happiness that comes from being validated without any feelings of guilt or reservation. You have earned this moment with effort that very few people could have sustained. Having been put through the ringer, your honor and integrity, which were previously called into doubt and criticized, now shine with an even greater brilliance. Those who had doubts about you can now see with clarity what was always there. Those who have stood by you feel justified in their confidence, and their devotion has been rewarded with the confirmation of their judgment. By working together, you are able to stand in the light of truth, which no lie can ever be able to totally conceal. There is something even more significant than the external win, and that is the transformation that takes place within you. In spite of the fact that the entire world is witnessing the public vindication, you are the only one who can completely grasp the extent of the personal transformation that has taken place underneath the surface. Your brain has been rewired as a result of this event. Neural pathways that were previously predisposed to accepting information at face value have been re-established through the utilization of centers of discernment and critical review. Whereas in the past, you might have been able to accept things as they were presented, you now have the ability to see the layers beneath the surface, the motivations behind the statements, and the patterns that reveal hidden agendas. Whereas in the past, you might have had doubts about your instincts when they were in conflict with official narratives, you now trust them implicitly, recognizing them as sophisticated instruments of truth detection that have been refined through harsh experience. The stories that they told you in order to intimidate you into silence are no longer able to exert any influence over your mind. Your sense of self is no longer affected by the charges that you are overly sensitive, that you have misunderstood, or that you have exceeded your boundaries. You are now able to see them for what they truly are: strategies of manipulation that are made to protect the manipulator rather than to reflect reality. The emotional hooks that they used to manipulate your responses have been removed in a methodical manner, leaving you resistant to strategies that used to cause you significant pain in the past. You were able to pass a test that you had never wanted to take because you were able to keep your integrity even at the most difficult occasions, when giving in appeared to be the only reasonable option. Now that you have passed it, you have acquired wisdom that is something that can only be earned and never given. The information is ingrained in your bones, in your reflexes, and in the way that you respond intuitively to circumstances that most people still approach with naivety. Naivety is no longer something you can afford to be. You have developed into what some people could refer to as a super empath, which is someone who is able to detect deception before it occurs in its whole. Someone who is able to feel the currents of truth and untruth flowing beneath polite discussions and words that have been well prepared. Due to the fact that your radar for authenticity has been set to an extremely precise level, you are able to navigate conversations with a clarity that appears almost supernatural to those who have not developed such sensitivity. This sensitivity brings with it new boundaries, which are limits that are forged and maintained, and they serve to safeguard you from people who would take advantage of your openness. Your capacity for compassion has not diminished, and it may even be more profound than it was before. Nevertheless, it is now directed by discernment, which prevents you from becoming a victim once more. It is possible to show compassion without granting unrestricted access, and it is also possible to show forgiveness without encouraging the wrongdoer to commit the same offense again. Because of this metamorphosis, you will not only be able to protect yourself, but you will also be able to assist other people who find themselves entangled in similar webs of deception. For others who are still looking for a route out of the darkness, your experience becomes a lantern that sheds light on the paths that lead to freedom. You are now able to guide others over terrain that you have already traversed, and you are able to discern the signs of manipulation that you had previously been unable to recognize. The suffering that you went through has been transformed into a purpose, the loneliness into a connection with those who are actually important, and the uncertainty into a certainty that resulted from your own lived experience, rather than from a conviction that you simply stole. Nothing that you went through was in vain. All of it has been repurposed into wisdom that will help you and others for years to come. There is a treasure that has been mined from the mine of adversity that you have worked so hard to acquire. Pay close attention. There are communications that are intended solely for you, whispers of encouragement that come from beyond the veil of ordinary perception, communications that bypass the logical mind and speak directly to the soul, confirming what you have always suspected, that you are supported by forces that are larger than the immediate physical reality. We are all in love with you, and thank you. The reality of these statements should be felt vibrating deep within your being. You are not only receiving gratitude from folks in your immediate vicinity, but also from the universe itself, because you have strengthened the very fabric of reality by remaining steadfast in your truth in the face of immense pressure to compromise. You have demonstrated that the fundamental idea that truth is important, that integrity is not something that can be negotiated, and that what is true ultimately triumphs over even the most sophisticated fabrications is something that you have reinforced. The difference may be made by you. This is not a meaningless platitude or a generic form of encouragement. Your path has provided you with one-of-a-kind insights that have the potential to generate ripples of positive change that spread far beyond your immediately surrounding circle. When you speak about deception, about gaslighting, and about preserving faith in one's own senses, in contrast to the reality that is generally accepted, your voice now has the resonance of earned authority. People listen with the awe that is reserved for those who have been through the fire and emerged altered rather than destroyed. Rather than being proud of what you have achieved or the things you own, you should be proud of the person you have become as a result of overcoming challenges. The difficulties that you were under have not in any way weakened the essence of your character. Rather, they have honed it. The impurities have been burned away, leaving behind something that is more valuable, more pure, and more unalterably you than what was there before. This experience is analogous to gold being tested in fire. Rather from being an indication of arrogance, this pride is a proper recognition of a self that has refused to be erased or reshaped by forces from the outside. Absolutely nothing can dull your radiance. In an effort to cast shadows over your inherent radiance, they attempted to decrease the brightness of your light in order to mislead you and others that you shined less brightly than you actually do. Nevertheless, light is not something that can be permanently stifled. It finds ways to show through even the tiniest of openings, and it finally overcomes all of the obstacles that have been constructed to confine it. Not only has the spark that makes you who you are remained unaffected by their efforts to diminish it, but it has also gotten stronger in defiance of those efforts. You have not only survived the exam, rather, you have transcended it. This is the final and possibly most crucial lesson that you have received. You have rather been raised to new heights of insight and empowerment as a result of something that was intended to destroy you. Lead has been transformed into gold through the process of alchemy, so transforming potential destruction into actual production. Not only does this confirmation originate from within, but it also originates from beyond, from the domain of timeless truths that observe, but do not intervene in any way other than by providing gentle instruction and certification. Synchronicities, dreams, and moments of clarity that appear to stem from something other than your typical thought patterns are all ways in which the message can be received. In the same way that these communications are sacred affirmations, you should honor them. Turn your gaze toward the horizon as the dust begins to settle and new vistas begin to appear. What exactly do you observe? Not the restricted choices that appeared to be open to you when you were ensnared in their story, but rather a vast panorama of opportunities that presents itself when the truth removes the obstructions that have been inhibiting you. The arrival of new opportunities is analogous to the arrival of ships that are loaded with bountiful provisions that are intended exclusively for you. Possibilities that could not reach you while you were surrounded by deception now find clear passage to your shore. Doors that remained firmly shut now swing open with the slightest touch, and paths that seemed impossibly overgrown are now clear before your feet, as if an invisible gardener has been at work preparing the way for your advance. There is the possibility of a more profound connection, which may even involve the appearance of a divine counterpart. This would be a person who sees you in every way and values you entirely, as well as someone who recognizes the resilience that you have built as a result of your struggles rather than being scared by them. A partnership in which the truth serves as the basis rather than the threat that must be avoided. A connection that is not constructed on the basis of illusion or convenience, but rather on the bedrock of mutual acknowledgement and respect. You must not let the knowledge that you have acquired remain buried deep within the storehouse of your own particular experience. Other people are still struggling in conditions that are comparable to what you have conquered. Other people are being gaslit into disbelieving their own views, and other people are being alienated by individuals who are afraid of the truth. They require your voice, your story, and your techniques for surviving and succeeding for them to be successful. These are the medications that are sorely required in a world that is ill with deception and infected with falsehoods that spread like viruses through systems that are supposed to protect the truth. You are now liberated to tell your truth without the fear that used to hold you back. You can do this through discussion, by sharing, or simply by being present in a genuine manner. You are a living example of what it is to be a human being with integrity. When you set an example for others, you give them permission to trust themselves, to honor their senses, and to remain steadfast in their truth, even when the pressure to comply threatens to overpower their will. There was a time when thinking about the future was accompanied by fear, but now it is accompanied by eagerness. Something that might occur is no longer a threat, but rather an invitation. You move on without being apprehensive, but with confidence, knowing that regardless of the difficulties that may come your way, you have already demonstrated that you are capable of overcoming more difficult problems. It is not a place to be afraid of the future. Rather, it is a blank canvas waiting for your creative contribution. Your experience has provided you with X-ray vision, which allows you to see through facades. Your pain has provided you with passion that extends beyond judgment to comprehension. Your success has provided you with confidence that goes beyond arrogance, allowing you to land instead in the region of peaceful, unwavering self-assurance. These presents, which you acquired at a very reasonable price, are now intended to assist you in navigating whatever lies ahead. This does not mark the conclusion of your story. Rather, it marks the beginning of the most significant chapter in your narrative. After you have successfully reclaimed your narrative from those individuals who attempted to write it for you, you now have the pen firmly in your own hand. After taking a break, the author has gone back to the text, prepared to finish the story with a genuine voice and a straightforward perspective. When you finally have the freedom to write, what will you write? With the power that you have reclaimed, what kinds of worlds will you create? With this knowledge that you have worked so hard to acquire, what kind of healing will you provide?